Hello, and welcome to this update on vRealize Operations Cloud. Myself, Tim, Navneet, and Brandon are all really excited to show you the new enhancements that we've brought to the May 2022 release of vRealize Operations Cloud. Now, of course, everything that you're going to see in this video is exclusive to vRealize Operations Cloud, so if you want to take advantage of all the latest and greatest features and have that SaaS-based operations management system, then definitely check out vRealize Operations Cloud. Now, today we're going to be talking about some new availability and also ways to get up to speed a lot faster in vRealize Operations Cloud. So we're talking about new in-product guides. And if you're not familiar with in-product guides, these are also exclusive to vRealize Operations Cloud, and they'll take you step-by-step through common tasks throughout the product. So things like setting up your first vCenter, creating a dashboard, creating alerts. And so we've got some new in-product guides to introduce today. We'll also talk about some enhancements to alerting and how we can build alerts much quicker and how we can edit them with a lot more efficiency. We'll talk about some of the usability updates, some integration updates, so talking about vRealize automation to vRealize operations. And then finally, we'll talk about some updates for federal customers who may fall under FedRAMP requirements.
So we're talking about availability and time to value. So in case you haven't heard, vRealize Operations Cloud is now available in India. It's been available for a little bit now, but it became available since our last release, so we wanted to make sure we mention it. So the next thing we'll talk about is the improvement of time to value. So we actually have what we're calling guided tours within vRealize Operations Cloud. And what's new is actually the addition of some capacity tour and 2 cost management tours. So showing you a slide on it won't really do it justice, so let me switch over and do a demo. You can see the little, this little pop-up down here. The guided tours aren't new, it's just we have a couple of new ones in the environment. So just kind of show you here, capacity management. This is one of the new ones. So you just click on here, takes you to the, takes you kind of through the whole process. So it takes me to navigate to the assess capacity page. Kind of tells me what to do, select the data center. And it kind of points out the important parts. So I'm not going to run through the whole thing here, but the idea is, this kind of helps get you up to speed and understanding this new, the capacity from this new tour. So with that, let me close out this one and kind of switch over and show you the other 2 real quick. So under cost management, so these are the other 2 ones. So we have cost overview and cost showback. So anybody that knows me, knows that the cost is a very important subject. So this kind of helps you look at the cost of the environment, kind of shows you the important details from for this one's showing the cost management page. So kind of walks you through and shows you things like the total cost of ownership, my potential savings in the environment, my realized savings, and then points out a lot of dashboards that we have in the environment. So pretty simple, but enough to get you to get an understanding of what we have from a cost perspective, where to look, and then where to find more details for cost down here. And then the other one here is for showback. So this is when you have when you want to do showback in your environment to show your end users how much their virtual machines cost in their environment. So you can go in here and select a particular application. So let's just leave it on vSphere World. So this is showing all of my virtual machines, so I can see the cost summary of all of the virtual machines within in my environment. So because I selected the world group here. So we can see my cost summary, my distribution of my virtual machines. So this kind of makes it nice and easy, kind of guides you through and kind of tells you what the various pieces are and what we're showing in the particular dashboard. So like I said, these are the main new ones is the capacity one and the 2 cost management. So pretty cool ones, definitely worth checking out. If you haven't looked at the tours today, pretty cool to check those out.
All right, let's take a look at some of the alert enhancements that we are introducing here.
And the first of which is specific to on-the-fly alert creation. So this is creating alerts on the metrics tab for an object or within the troubleshooting workbench. Now, previously, when you created these alert definitions, we would create a symptom for those definitions. In an 8.6, we introduced this idea of conditions, and the difference between a symptom and a condition is that a symptom can be used across multiple alert definitions. It kind of stands alone. So within that symptom, we could set a threshold for, say, if CPU goes above a certain percentage, right, then trigger that alert. And so what I could do is I could create multiple alert definitions that leverage that symptom and maybe leverage other symptoms, right? I can kind of mix and match things. Now with conditions, those are created within the alert definition. So those can only be used with that definition. Now the benefit here is that you can actually edit those thresholds within the alert definition as opposed to going out to the symptom. And I'll show you that in the demonstration here. And there's also the added benefit of not having another object to have to clean up. So say I want to delete my alert definition, I don't have to go in and find that symptom as well and delete that too. And conditions just make a lot more sense for on-the-fly alerts like the ones created in the metrics tab and troubleshooting workbench, because they're often created as sort of a really quick one-off alert. Now, when creating these on-the-fly alert definitions, you may have noticed that it's really easy to duplicate alerts here, right? So look at that CPU example that I gave earlier. If I want to create an on-the-fly alert definition for if CPU goes above a certain threshold, right, you can create that in previous versions. However, the problem lies in that there's already an alert definition for when CPU gets too high on a virtual machine. So what you're effectively doing here is you could be potentially creating alert storms for yourself and just getting into a real mess. So what we're also introducing is another enhancement that we're actually going to look to see if there's another alert that uses the same metric. And if it does, then we're actually going to have you update that existing alert definition rather than creating a new one and again, getting ourselves into trouble with alert storms. We've also improved how we display things like recommendations and actions. So in previous versions, we could see these as more of a list view. However, we got to click on some of the links to get information like the referenced recommendations or definitions. So with this, we just have a nice summary view of everything from what the recommendation actually is, what the resource types it's applied to are, as well as, of course, those recommendations and alert definitions that are referencing these objects. To start off this demonstration, I want to show you the previous way of creating on-the-fly alert definitions, so that way you can compare and contrast the improvement that we are introducing here. So first of all, I'm going to go into my environment, and I'm going to go and find a virtual machine. So let's go into Santa Clara VC1, select the data center, and let's look at CMAC VM. So we're going to pick CMAC jump box here. So if I go into the metrics, of course, I can select a metric. I could go into the troubleshooting workbench and create an alert definition based on a metric that I find in there. But here, I'm just going to go into CPU, and I'm going to look at CPU usage percentage. Okay. So let's say I want to create an alert definition here. I would just simply go in, click on the ellipsis here, and create an alert definition. And so I'll say MB CPU is too high. And I can say if the metric is greater than, say, 70%, trigger a warning. Okay. Now, of course, this alert will apply to the policy that this virtual machine is under. So in this case, it's the vSphere Solution default policy. So this will also apply to all other virtual machines within this policy. So let's go ahead and create this alert definition. Now that was pretty easy to create, right? So let's go in and let's try and modify that because maybe 70% wasn't quite high enough. So let's go into our alert definitions, and here I'm going to type MB CPU, and here it is, MB CPU is too high. So let's go in and let's edit that. Now, if I go into the symptoms and conditions, you'll see here, I can't actually edit this. What I need to do is go back to the symptom object and update the threshold here to say 80%. So, all right, now let's take a look at deleting these. So if I just want to go ahead and clean this up, that was a mistake. I didn't actually need this alert. There's already an alert for this. So I can go in and I can delete the alert definition, but I still need to go in and delete the symptoms. So let's go into our alerts and look at symptom definitions and look for MB CPU. And here it is, MB CPU is too high, number 2. You can see I have an old one here that I haven't quite cleaned up yet. So I can actually edit the threshold within here, but also I need to go in and delete this symptom and also delete this symptom right here. Now let's contrast that same process against the May update for vRealize Operations Cloud. So again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select that. Let's go to that same virtual machine. So let's go to VC1 and go into CMAC VMs and CMAC jump box. So again, I'll go into the metrics tab here and let's select CPU utilization percentage. Okay, so we've got our metric here. And again, if I want to just create an alert definition based on this metric, I click on create alert definition. But aha, here it says update alert definition. So I'm not going to create a new alert definition because there's already an alert definition that uses CPU usage. And in this case, it's looking at 100%. So I could go ahead and I could actually edit this if I wanted to. I could even add other criticalities too. So say if it's at 70%, right, trigger a warning. So that's pretty cool. Now I'm not going to duplicate my alert definition. So let's take a look at a different metric. So let's look at cost. And I want to look at my effective daily cost. Say I'm very cost conscious and I want to know if this virtual machine is going to go over $1 a day, right? That's all I've got budgeted for. It's just a jump box. I don't want to pay that much for this virtual machine. So again, create an alert definition. And here I'll just say MB cost is too high. And you'll see we are creating a new alert because there isn't an alert that uses this metric already. So here I'll say if the metric is greater than 1, trigger an info warning. And under advanced, right, we can still set the wait cycle and cancel cycle, but for this one, that's fine. I don't need any of that here. This is just fine. So let's go ahead and create this alert definition. Now, again, this alert definition is going to apply to all virtual machines that are under the same policy as this VM. So in this case, the default policy. So that's going to be a lot of virtual machines here. So let's say I want to change that metric because now I'm getting too many alerts for, effective daily cost is over $1. So let's go in and let's modify that alert definition. And here I'm going to look for MB cost. So here it is, MB cost is too high. Now when I go in and edit it, I can go into the conditions, and now I can change this value right within the alert definition. So say I want to be alerted when it goes over $10. So I can simply update the alert here, and that's that. Now, if I want to clean this up, if I don't need this alert anymore, all I have to do is just go in and delete it, and that's it. I don't need to go clean up any symptoms or anything like that. Now let's take a look at the enhancements for recommendations and for actions. So I'm going to start off by taking a look at actions here. And this is the list view that we've got in previous versions. But if I look at delete unused snapshots for VM, for example, let's select this one. Now over here, I've got in a summary screen, I can see the action type, the resource adapter type, all of that. I can also look at the recommendations here. So virtual machine has multiple snapshots. So that recommendation also has this action attached to it. So I could go in and I could actually click on this. And now I'm looking at the recommendation. And again, we've got this nice summary view here. I can see all of the alert definitions that this recommendation is assigned to, right? So when those alerts trigger, it's going to recommend that you clean up some of the older snapshots. Now, another small but important enhancement that we've introduced here is if I click remove from all, this will remove this recommendation from all of these alert definitions. Now, if I click remove from all, I'll actually get a pop-up that says, are you sure you want to do that? Previously, this was actually a pretty dangerous button to click because it doesn't give you that verification. So minor but yet important improvement.
All right. So a couple quick things to mention, and then I'll just kind of show these or show what these look like in vRealize operations. The first one is we added a search bar here on the admin page so that you can just start typing in whatever it is you're looking for rather than try to find the icon there. And again, I'll show this in a moment. The second is redefining or kind of changing the way that we're looking through our filters. So there's a kind of the old way and the new way, so that it makes it a little bit easier to see exactly what your filters are set for. So let's actually go and show these. All right, the admin page first. Here's our search panel. Now we can just go from, if we wanted to look at our global settings, we can just start typing and we'll come up there. If we wanted to look at, say, users or roles, anything we wanted to look at, we can just start typing, and that will pull up that icon for us, so we can click directly in there. And second of all, looking through our filters. So if I could just go to alerts, we can see right now we've got just active, and we're at our criticality is just a warning. Now we can bring up that filter button here. We click on more filters, and now we can see we can actually go through, say, okay, maybe I want storage and maybe networking alerts here. I can change, the status or subtypes, if we wanted to change that, as well as criticality or any of the other options there. And if we hit apply, then it will bring that up. Now this will work on most of the places we have list views. So if I go, for another example, and go to our inventory, this will work here as well. Same kind of thing. We can then search through our inventory there. So any place we have list views, such as triggered alerts, alert definitions, symptom definitions, our policies, the inventory look we're looking at here, we'll be able to see that the new filter search will pull up there.
With this update, we're also introducing the idea of scopes. And what these are is a collection of objects that we can use as a template as we're assigning roles to users and to groups. So instead of selecting a role for a user and then having to click through and select all of the objects that that role applies to, we would actually just select a role and apply that to a scope. So a scope can be used across multiple user accounts and multiple user groups. So for example, say I build a scope out of all of my public cloud objects, and then I can use that scope as I'm creating a user account to assign read-only access to that scope. So previous versions, I would have to go in and assign a role to that user and then assign that role to any number of objects and go click through each time. But now as I'm creating multiple accounts, I can just use the scope and not have to reselect all of those same objects across all of those users or across all of those groups. We also have a new way to preview user accounts and user groups. So by clicking on an account or a user group, I can now see, what are all the roles and scopes that that group or that account has access to. And for groups, I can also see all of the members right within this preview pane. And of course, there's the edit button there for me to go ahead and edit that account or that group. We've also streamlined the process for editing a user group or a user account. So I can actually go in and I can select the roles and the scope, and I can add multiple roles and scopes to the account or to the group. And one important thing worth mentioning for customers that leverage APIs, you can create scopes and assign these to users via the APIs. Now to begin, let's take a look at the previous way that we would assign roles to a user or to a group. So I've got the CMBU demo account here. If I select it, I can see what groups this is a member of, and then the permissions. So in this case, I've got read only to all objects. Now let's say I want to give administrative access to my public clouds. So I would go in, I'd edit this, I'll get this pop-up here, and I can select the role that I want and assign this role to the user. And then in this case, I'm going to look at adapter instances. So I'm going to say, okay, AWS, TMM. We can look for Google Cloud down here, say TMM. And then we can also look for Microsoft Azure and for TMM, right? So once I click OK, now this user has administrative access to all of those adapter instances. So if I wanted to go and assign the same permissions to another user or to another group, I would have to follow this same procedure. Now let's take a look at the new way to assign roles to a user and to groups. And we're going to start off by taking a look at our scopes. So I've got a scope already built out for all objects. I've got one for my Santa Clara on-premises vSphere, one for public clouds, my vSphere Tanzu VCF lab, and then my Wenatchee data center. So let's go in and let's take a look at the TMM public clouds. So just like with the last demo that I gave with the old way, in here now I would just give the scope a name, description, And this is where I would go to select my adapter instances or specific objects within vRealize operations. So you can see I've already got AWS, GCP, and Microsoft Azure selected for the scope. So now let's take a look at a user account. So we're going to take a look at our CMView demo account. And if I click on it, this is where we would get the preview pane. So I can see I've already got administrative access to my vSphere Tanzu lab, and then the groups that this user is a part of. If I go in and edit the account, I can click here to edit, or I can also go over here to edit the account. And with this new view, now I can go down and I can add more roles and scopes to this user. So in this case, I've just got the administrative here. If I click the plus sign, I can add, say, read-only for TMM public clouds. And we'll go ahead and save it. And that's it. We can now see that we are read-only for TMM public clouds. And of course, now I can go through and do this for other users and for other groups. I don't have to go and select all those objects again. I just assign that role and that scope to that user.
I'm here to talk to you about an enhancement we have made to the advanced workload placement feature. I presume most of you are aware of this feature already. There is a configuration in VRA that enables VRA to seek VROps' recommendations in order to make placement decisions. For instance, imagine a cloud zone that has 5 different clusters. VRA seeks VROps' recommendations to identify the best among the 5 clusters for any given deployment. Now, this capability has been available for a long time now, but there is a limitation to this feature which creates a situation where we end up over-provisioning resources to the clusters, and that's precisely the problem we are trying to solve today. The algorithm today depends entirely on the utilization numbers based on demand model only. So if you have a large deployment, let's say 100 virtual machines, which you initially deployed to cluster number 1, now it is going to take a while for the demand to actually pick up. Because the demand is low, you continue to make future deployments into the same cluster. The demand picks up and there is significant contention in the environment. For some cloud zones, you may have the notion of what the correct overcommit ratio is, and you may not want to over-provision beyond those numbers. So that's the enhancement we have made available now to make this feature that works on demand model to also become allocation model aware. So with that background, 2 important callouts. The demand model can never be turned off. This is on by default. We can make the algorithm also allocation model aware. So that's the enhancement. The second important callout is that this capability is limited to AWLP only, which is the capability that you get when you bring VRA and VROps together. This capability is not extended to the traditional workload optimization capability that's available natively within VROps. So 3 prerequisites to get this working. That's basically what you see in the screenshots here. So the first screenshot basically shows VROps configured as an endpoint within VRA. This is not something that you have to worry about in the cloud world because the 2 products are integrated automatically in this. The second configuration is that within the applicable cloud zones, you have to enable advanced as the placement policy. These 2 options were a prerequisite even in the existing AWLP, which is demand model only. The only additional configuration that you have to worry about is to make the overcommit configurations in VROps. For this, we are leveraging the existing overcommit configurations in the capacity page, which is you configure the CPU and memory overcommits in the cluster compute resource. So this is how my deployment looks like. So in my cloud zone, I have 2 clusters, cluster 1 and cluster 2. And when you look at the demand numbers, so I have a total of 50 gigs in cluster 1. And the current usage is about 10 gigs, that's about 20%. And this is how the situation looks even on the other cluster. But when you look at the vCPUs remaining, I have a total of 24 vCPUs on cluster 1, right? But I've exhausted 14 of them already. And when you look at cluster 2, again, I have 24 vCPUs left, and I've exhausted about 16 of them already. So the message from my environment right now is that we are good when it comes to demand, right? But not so good when it comes to the vCPUs left in terms of allocation. Between the 2 clusters, I have just about 16 vCPUs left. And like I said, the only configuration that we have to worry about is the overcommit provisioning in the policy setting. I'm just going to show you how that looks like. I have enabled 1:1 allocation model for CPU and memory in my cluster compute. And for disk space, I've used the same 1:1 configurations of data store and data store cluster. So this is all enabled, which now means that the advanced workload placement feature is now allocation model aware, in addition to also being demand model aware. So what I'll do is I'll go to VRA and I'll make this deployment. So this deployment basically provisions 20 virtual machines, with each virtual machine having one vCPU. What I'm trying to basically do is exhaust or breach my allocation thresholds. Like I said, I only have space left for about 16 vCPUs in my cloud zone. So I'm going to call this, let's say, run one. And I know this is a large deployment. And my expectation is that this is going to fail, because this is now going to breach the allocation thresholds. So let's try this out. Okay, just a pro tip here. You see the number of tasks that are being executed. Task number 2 is where VRA will interact with VROps to seek the placement recommendations. Okay, as you can see, the task number 2 failed, and you can go to the history to see the same failure message coming in from VROps, which basically says VROps cannot make a recommendation. And we know from our environment, this recommendation is failing because we have breached the allocation thresholds. So I'll go back to the policy settings in VROps and disable the overcommits. Right, and before we make the exact same, I just want to reconfirm to make sure that the changes are reflecting. So it's all NA right here, which basically means the advanced workload placement feature is now back to depending upon only the demand model. So I'm going to go back to VRA and make the exact same deployment, which is again 20 virtual machines, right? And this time around, I presume this is going to pass because we have disabled allocation thresholds from AWLP and it is only demand model aware. So let's try this out. So I'll call this run 2. This is again the exact same large deployment, and my expectation is this is going to pass. Like I said again, we just have to wait for task number 2 to go through, which is where the recommendations from VROps succeeds. Okay, as you can see, the second task is done, and the deployments have actually begun. So this is essentially the capability that we provide now, which we were not able to achieve before.
Last thing I want to talk about here is some enhancements we've made to the public cloud adapters. So we've taken kind of some things that were hidden below in the advanced settings and brought those up above here, so that things like services and regions, meaning that they were a little bit hidden, and now we can see them on the right-hand side of the screen here that we're bringing those up. So services and regions are now on the top. And also, it was maybe a little confusing before, where we didn't know if we had to select all the services or if we had to select all regions to get everything there. So the little hint there lets us know if we don't put anything in to our services or regions, then it is going to just pull all the services, all regions from that. The other thing is making under our credentials, pulling out that some of these are going to be mandatory. Meaning our credential name, our access key, or secret key there is mandatory. We're just denoting that with a little bit of a red star there. So if I go and just demonstrate real quickly, we can see here we have all these services and regions, and if we leave it blank, it's going to pull all services, or we can start clicking those as we go through for services. Same thing with regions, if we're pulling all of our regions, or if we just want to pull maybe just from Mumbai or Singapore or something like that, we can choose those there. But this is now no longer hidden under that advanced setting tab, so that makes it a little bit easier to see there, so we know what we're pulling from. And then again, just with the credential, we're just making this so that these are required. We know that those are required. If we don't have any sort of proxy set up, or if we do, those are optional settings. But this makes it a little bit easier to see.
Let's talk about a couple of other enhancements. Now, this ability to monitor RDMs and disk sharing has been something that's been asked for a while. So this is really awesome to be able to have this available now. So you can see here's just an example of some of the metrics that are available now for virtual machines that have RDMs and or using disk sharing. So just for reference, I created this little this list of all the new properties that are available. So you can see we have the number of RDMs as a property now on the virtual machines, as well as various metrics that are on each virtual disk. So we can look at each VMDK, and you'll see a property that says, whether it's an RDM or not, what compatibility mode it's in, what the disk mode, whether it's independent persistent, or independent non-persistent. You can see SCSI bus sharing, virtual disk sharing, and then also the SCSI controller type was added as well. So lots of new metrics and properties that should make it a lot easier to monitor the more complicated disk environments for virtual machines. And then the other one wanted to mention is some new metrics that gives you the ability to monitor VM operations. So this gives you the ability to track things like creating new virtual machines, deleting virtual machines, doing vMotions, powering on, powering off virtual machines. This can be, like I said, vMotion, storage vMotion, lots of different metrics related to, they're kind of grouped into 3 different categories here. So change of inventory, change of location, that's your migration ones, and then change of state, that's your power on, power off, reboot, et cetera. So these metrics are available at various objects. So the vSphere world, so you can get kind of the high-level overview of the environment. You can see it at vCenter server level, data center level, and the cluster level. This would be really great and kind of help show what's going on in the environment. How volatile and how much, how many different operations are going on. So to kind of show what this looks like, I've created a custom dashboard. So here's one that I created to show the VM operations. So I've just selected vSphere World, and then I created this little, the scoreboard kind of shows how many VMs, and then we can see the kind of the operations and what's going on these particular virtual machines. So you can see here, these are my inventory operation changes. Oops, looks like my thing changed here. So my inventory operations, so we can see how those are going, and I kind of have them stacked so you can kind of get an idea of how much is going on at any point in time. Migrations, so these are the vMotions, storage vMotions, things like that. So we can see we've got how many migrations we've got going on at any point in time, and then the change of state. So these are power on, power off, those kind of operations as well. So you can kind of get an idea of the volatility of the environment. How much is changing, how much is going on. So it gives you a unique perspective, a different perspective that we haven't had before. So I think it's pretty cool. And I will share this dashboard out on our sample exchange for anybody that wants to use it. So this is a screenshot of a sample dashboard that I created that can help you look at the VMs that have RDMs. So you just would select the environment, and it automatically lists all the virtual machines that have, or any virtual machines that has an RDM attached to it. And then it just kind of lists the details of the VMDKs attached to the virtual machine. So I can easily see, which ones are RDMs. So you can see here, I've got one RDM attached to this virtual machine, and then I've got a couple ones that have been deleted. But the important part here is, we can actually get in there and see what's going on with these VMs with RDMs, and then we can see other things, whether they're shared or not, which is pretty cool. So anyway, that's really what I had to show. And like I said, I'll share both of these dashboards on Sample Exchange so you can find those and use them in your environment.
With this update, we've also addressed a number of gaps with regards to FedRAMP. So the first of which is including the client IP address in our audit logs. Now, of course, the audit logs are capturing things like who created
dashboards or alerts or other types of content, or who deleted things, or who took actions within vRealize operations. So now including that client IP address helps us to track down who made those changes in case an account gets compromised. And we can also replace the internal self-signed certificates that are used between services within vRealize Operations Cloud with CA signed certificates. So this could be done through the CASA API, which isn't exposed publicly for good reason. However, our SRE teams can make those changes for you.
So thanks so much for checking this video out. Hope you enjoyed these updates. And again, be sure to check out vRealize Operations Cloud. All the links are in the description below. Thanks so much for joining.